And we're live, streaming from Founders Park in historic Ocean Grove, New Jersey. We are Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Thank you for joining us for our unique podcast community. Here on Music Matters, we explore the triumphs and challenges of the musical world as seen through the eyes of distinguished artists. I'm Jason Tramm, and I've been in the classical music industry for over 25 years as a conductor, music director, university professor, and most recently the host of Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Here on Music Matters, we take you behind the curtain to reveal artistic innovations and self-discoveries made during challenging times as we've all faced this year. You can hear Music Matters on YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live, and you can hear us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a wonderful guest today. We have Karolina Pilou, who is an acclaimed mezzo-soprano who made her Met debut in the 2016 season, and she's worked there many times. She's also sang in Carnegie Hall and many prestigious places, and I got the privilege of working with her a couple of years ago in a Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. It's a wonderful voice and a wonderful person. Welcome, Karolina.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. It's
a pleasure. And it's been too long. So how have you been during this crazy past year?
It's been definitely interesting times, as it has, for everybody, especially in our industry that's been hit so hard by COVID. It's been a challenging time, staying, I think for most of my colleagues, the first few weeks or months, maybe even, it was hard to even get to practice, and this unknown became from just a couple of weeks, it turned into months and then a year.
Wasn't it crazy to figure out, how do we remain creative when our main way of being creative is taken away?
Absolutely. And the devastation, of course, of engagements being canceled right and left and sort of not knowing until the last minute what's going to happen or not happen, and if you should keep working on something or not work on it and not get your hopes up. And I think especially for me, it was devastating to watch colleagues of mine who had big debuts coming up and they got canceled and big opportunities that they were looking forward to. But it's been very, very interesting, challenging, but also in a good way. I mean, I think we were all forced to find what we love about what we do and be a lot more grateful for it.
That's the silver lining. There are always silver linings. I mean, we're going to walk away with this with such a new appreciation for our art. I have a lot of colleagues. Some colleagues have left the business, and then the rest have become so focused on what we're doing and so in tune and ready to start up again. So I can't wait to make music with you and to hear about your artistic journey. When did you start the musical journey, and did you always know you wanted to be an artist?
Yeah, I think since I've been told that even when I was a toddler, I would go around making operatic sounds, which I had heard. I think my father was very much into Pavarotti, and lots of other music, but I was very much taken by his voice. And so apparently I would go around just, singing somewhat operatically as much as a, 2 or 3 year old can do that. So everybody always thought, she's going to be an opera singer. And then when I was in school, I was always chosen, to sing the solo parts in the school concerts. So it became very clear that singing is what I was going to do. But it was not operatic singing for the longest time. I thought it was going to be, Greek contemporary music, Greek folk music, jazz at some point. And then somebody who was a very big producer at EMI in Greece, whose daughter went to the same school as myself, heard me. And he said, you have a contract, but you need to go get some singing lessons to fix your articulation and your pronunciation and all these things. And so I went very reluctantly to take lessons, sort of wondering if the teacher is going to make me sing operatically, which was very common because we didn't have really a lot of great teachers for belting and things like that, back then, at least in Greece. And she was indeed somebody who was classically trained and made me sing operatically. And I fell in love with it. I was 17. At my first lesson, I started singing operatically, classically, as this teacher made me, and I lost my mind. I mean, I went home, I announced to my parents that I'm going to be an opera singer, and I never looked back, apart from a couple of crises where I wanted to do different things, but because singing is too difficult. But
We'll talk about some of those. We've all had those. The
yeah.
artistic journey is one full of challenges and overcoming challenges. So, what was it that grabbed you, that said that opera's for me? What was it about connecting with that operatic voice that just resonated with you?
I think, at 17, I had a lot of sort of teenage angst, and it was an intense time, right? For most of us at that age, is a difficult, can be a difficult and intense time. And I would always, I remember I would come back from school and I would lock myself in my room and sort of sing for 2-3 hours. And what was interesting to me was when I discovered classical singing and I started taking lessons, this is going to sound funny, but like suddenly, instead of having to sing for 3 hours, I would sing one aria, and it was all that energy and all that emotion was challenged and expressed a lot more effectively, I guess. But so it was so much more involving and involved, and it was arresting, for me. It was all encompassing, and I could not, the vibrations that I felt in my body were just so intense, and it was the most wonderful sensation, and to be able to express everything that I felt through just one or two arias was magic. There was no question about it. And of course the acting, the theater aspect of it was extremely important to me, and it sort of covered two different things that I was interested in, so to be able to do both at once is just bingo.
The Italians in 1600, the Florentine Camerata, coming up with this new art form that combined the everything that was available to them, the vocal, the art, the orchestra, the theater. It really is magic. And once you get exposed to it, there's no backing out. I was the same. When I went to college and I was around opera for the first time seriously, I think I did a Verdi Requiem, and I'm like, this is what I want to do right here.
Well, that's interesting that you said Verdi Requiem, because I remember once I got very much into opera and classical, and I remember I would save all my money and go and buy classical music CDs, and so I got to learn a lot more about symphonic works and oratorios and things like that, and I would pick things practically randomly, but it was great because I got introduced to a lot of different things this way. And I remember the first time so distinctly, the first time that I listened to Verdi's Requiem, and I was taking a break from studying for the national exams in Greece for high school, and I had the only way I can describe it is it was this humongous spiritual experience and I did not consider myself spiritual at the time at all. It was not where it was just the magnitude of this piece. I could not quite understand or put to words, and I still cannot, what it is that I felt, but it was so tremendous that I thought, my goodness, if I get to do this for the rest of my life, what a blessing that is. It's crazy that some of us get to do this.
Yeah, it's an amazing feeling every time I get to conduct one of those masterworks. It's like bringing a great work of art to life, and each one, it takes so much energy and so much time to learn, but when you do it, it's like it's the reason we exist.
Yes, it's magic. There's the only word to describe it.
So tell me about your journey from Greece, your training, your learning, and then your international journeys, because opera is such an international art form. That's one of my favorite things about I work with colleagues from all over the world, and it's such a pleasure and a blessing. So tell us about your international journey.
So I started taking singing lessons in Greece, and it gave me a lot of good things, but technique was not one of those things that I was not very fortunate. So I knew, thankfully, my father was pretty involved from early on with my career. So very early on, he said, I think, not because I'm your dad, but it sounds like you may have significant amount of talent. So let's get you out of here and to somewhere where you are not the best person in the class, but rather you're competing with people who are better than you, and you have something to learn. And so we started looking at, where is the best place to go. I sang for Jason Pilou, who is a very distant relative, very distant relative of mine, and she sort of also advised me on where to go. So I picked London, and I went to Guildhall School. I was very fortunate to be accepted at Guildhall School of Music and Drama, which was, it's a wonderful, wonderful school with an incredible tradition in classical music. And that was also, looking back, it was an amazing, very transformative time in my life. And I think that's kind of what made me into the person that I am today, and as a musician and a singer, because it was a very difficult time. I was not the right voice type, basically, for that program. And it is an amazing school. And I have seen many of my classmates who are now colleagues get fantastic things out of it. But my voice was a little bit too wild at the time for a British sort of institute, if you want. So it was a lot of rejection there. I could never make it into the opera courses. I could never make it into the, to get cast in anything. I went through a lot of vocal issues during that time. But that also, I had amazing friendships that developed there, and relationships, and also discovering who I am and why I want to sing, and why I think through all that rejection, I discovered that voice, within me that said, I have something to say. I don't care if these people cannot see it right now, but I know that I have something to say and something that I want to communicate. And so I need to find a way to get this out there. And that led me to, I had one of my wonderful teachers there insisted that I move to New York, or to the US in general. He was British himself, but he kept saying to me, your voice is not right for here. People cannot understand your voice here until you're probably going to be very established, and then they can just accept you. But and he was very rightly so, thinking that the US, where there's so many big voices, there's so much tradition of big singers, he thought this would be a better fit for me. And indeed, it was the perfect fit for me. I moved to New York in 2009. I went to Mannes for my artist diploma, and it was the best educational experience of my life. It was life-changing, really. The acceptance that I found, and of course I had done all the hard work before, so there's that to be said. I was a much better singer than I was back at Guildhall.
Worked on your musical chops, I'm sure. Really worked hard on the musical concepts. And
yes.
Yeah. So how do you maintain your belief in yourself? I've heard the story from a lot of great singers. We had Jennifer Rowley, had a very similar story. She was at Indiana and she didn't get cast in anything, and she was not happy. So she was, she said, I have something, just like you did, and kept her belief in herself. That must be really hard. Thank you for sharing that story, because there are a lot of people listening to the show who are going to have similar journeys that people don't understand where they're coming from. The voice doesn't work right away, but but there's something there and they know it.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and I always like to talk about this, not to play the violin and say, "Oh, poor me, it was so difficult." But I think it's so important for young artists to hear stories like this, as you said, because I think there are a lot of people in the industry who are very fortunate. They are extremely gifted, and they have had all the right teachers from the beginning and the right educational environments, and things happen for them. And I think. And that find it have a very easy time getting the work done and getting actually the jobs, and everything kind of works out. But I think there are also people that struggle so much to get there, and it's important for these stories to be heard. For me, it was more, there were two aspects to it. One is I always surrounded myself by at least one or two people that I really trusted their ears. So wherever I went, I found some people who understood my voice, understood my talent, but there were also people whose opinions I genuinely valued. People that I saw give other colleagues criticism that I agreed with, that I thought was valid, and they were not afraid to say the difficult things to me and to other people.
That's so important, that team mentality. You need a team behind you that can help you, that's honest with you. Very important.
For me, that was key. And because I had these people that really believed in me, that I valued their opinions, that helped me for sure. But the bigger piece probably of it was not so much about the voice. I knew that I had a very good instrument. I knew that I had back then, a lot of technical issues and a lot of vocal health issues that were stemmed from the technical issues. I did not have the faith at all that I was going to fix the technical issues or the vocal health issues. I was, in fact, terrified that it's never going to get fixed. However, I had this sense that, as I said before, that I have something to say. So even if my instrument and my instrument playing, if you want, is not what it needs to be for a career, and it doesn't get there, I know that I have something that I want to communicate. I know that when I express myself through music, I touch people. I know that the effect that I can have on other people when I open my heart and share what I have to share, and the way I interpret a role or a piece or a song, and I knew that for me, that is what you need first and foremost, to have something to say. So I thought the rest of it, I'm going to figure out, or I'm not going to figure out, but that is a reason to keep going.
And big voices sometimes take longer. It's like the lyric sopranos, the coloraturos, they come out of the womb singing,
Right.
that repertoire. But the big voices, the dramatic voices, take longer to develop, generally speaking.
They really do. And, it's interesting. You hear that when you're a bigger voice, you hear that so much. And in the beginning, it's a constellation. And then you get to a point where you see other people. That's the trick part. You're like, okay, this is apparently what it is. But then why does person A, B, C, D, E, F, G, who also has a big voice, why are they having a career and I'm not having a career? Why are they there? Maybe it's not true. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not meant to be doing this, But and there are always, that's the other thing, there's always moments of self-doubt, even when you do have this voice that you can hear and say, I need to keep going. I'm going to get to somewhere with this. I'm going to get to share this with people. There are still times, even for those of us who have that sense, where you lose it. And you're convinced that, no, I was wrong. And I was wrong to sacrifice all these years of my life doing this. And maybe the universe is trying to show me that this is not going to happen. And that's also important for people to know. It doesn't mean that because you are committed and because you have found strength and resilience, that is continuous all the time, 100% of the times. We all have moments of weakness where
we've all learned that in the past year, certainly.
Yes. And it's definitely been interesting seeing people sort of, especially on social media, now that we're all so open on social media about everything. It's
sometimes too open.
Too open. Correct. But it has also been reassuring watching colleagues share their journey through this COVID year and their ups and downs. Because we are all in this together, and you do see, apart from the very few people, the top 1% that even through COVID had very prestigious engagements and things like that. The rest of us, we've been all in the same boat and having ups and downs and periods where I remember in the beginning, most of us were struggling to practice. There were so many of us who could not get ourselves to the piano to practice and
coach, take the lessons. Yeah. I mean, the Zoom lessons. Did you do Zoom lessons with your teachers and coaches?
I did, and I was I had been so resistant to this for years. There were times I remember, when I would be traveling and I would need a tune-up, and I would just not want to do it online, and I would just skip it because I did not want to do it online. I was convinced that it's impossible. And of course, with COVID, it was either this or nothing. So,
not much choice in that matter.
Yeah. Yes. And it turns out, of course, it comes with some challenges. But when you're working with somebody who knows your voice very well, a lot of times it doesn't even matter. They don't even need to hear the sound. They can just see what you're doing, that they can connect to, what's happening technically that is correct or not correct or needs adjustment. So it's been very eye-opening. And it's going to be interesting to see how much are we going to return to in person.
It's beginning. I mean, I'm watching colleagues start to work again, and myself, I've done a couple. I've got concerts coming up. This weekend's my first concert in a year and a half, and I'm beyond elated. I can't wait to get in front of people again. And it's been emotional. I started crying in the first rehearsal. I heard a big chord, and then I had to stop, put my hands down. I'm like, that was so emotional. I think we all feel like that. It's like whenever we start the process again, because we all know what we've lost and where we've come, and how special it is to do what we do.
I mean, it's interesting. I have a toddler, and he has all these books about orchestra, getting to know the orchestra. And this one book in particular, it has a sound of the tuning of the orchestra. And every time I hear it, my heart skips a beat. You know, I cannot wait to be on a big stage again and have that magical moment, which, you know, it's hard to explain to anybody who hasn't experienced it, what it feels like when you hear all the instruments together right before the beginning of a performance. It is just pure magic.
I'm with you. I'm backstage, I'm doing my stretches, I'm getting ready, focusing myself, doing a little bit of concentration work, and then all the energy is focused, and you get out there in front of the audience, and it is special.
Yeah, so how exciting. This is wonderful for you that you get to do this now.
Well, it's for you, it'll be around the corner too, because you are just so darn talented. And I heard first time I heard your singing, Peter Ransman put us in touch, and I was like, that is a voice. He knows I love big voices and I love exciting voices, and I'm like, that is the real deal.
Thank you. And I mean, I was lucky actually throughout COVID. I had a couple of engagements that I really enjoyed, that I think I would have enjoyed anyway, but COVID definitely made them even more special. You know, so, and I'm very aware of how lucky I am. I know a lot of my colleagues and people who are even more established, you know, than I am, who didn't have any opportunity to work. And by work, I really don't even mean, you know, I mean the actual joy of being in a rehearsal room. And of course, people have to support their families and all of that. And that's a whole other story. You know, we can talk about how that has affected our community. But there were so many people who were deprived completely of the joy of being in a rehearsal room with other artists making music together. And I cannot imagine what a year looks like when you have not had that opportunity. So well,
it's never happened before, because see, in the history of the Metropolitan Opera, maybe we've missed a performance for a blizzard, or 9/11 canceled 2 or 3 performances. That's it. Broadway, same thing. So this is once, not in a lifetime, but once since the history of both of those institutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's really never been done before. So we're all in the middle of it ourselves, and we're all going to be in this kind of, as it rolls back, we're all going to be part of that solution.
Right. I mean, I think
experiment.
Yes. I guess the only time that it was kind of similar was I guess around the recession, when a lot of people also dropped out, and it seems that I was not here at the time, but it seems like there's a whole new wave afterwards. It was a whole new situation. It's been heartbreaking to see so many colleagues drop out of the race, so to speak.
We've lost a whole generation. Yeah, some of the older members have retired, and some of the younger ones have moved, and it's going to be. We're not going to know the extent of what COVID is for another decade until researchers can research it. We're just kind of digging out,
yes.
You know, saying how can we get back to life again. But it's going to take a while, but it will happen. Humans need art more than they realize. I think where we would be if we didn't have Netflix, Spotify, streaming platforms. Where would we be if we didn't have that to keep us sane during this time?
And it's interesting because people that I meet who are not artists, everybody wants to talk about this, right? The effect that COVID has had. Everybody knows we've been hit very hard. And people ask me a lot, you know, do you think that you're going to come back? Do you think opera, the arts are going to survive? And I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt. I think it's going to be undoubtedly different. And we will see how different and in what ways in the next few years. I suspect it's going to be a very different landscape in many ways, but it's going to be back. There is no way that people who are in love with classical music are going to be satisfied with just listening to CDs.
The CD gives you nothing. It's not like hearing a voice like yours in the hall where you feel the resonance in your body over the full orchestra and the human voice in an Olympic act, singing over an entire orchestra, making bringing all that emotion to bear. And there's nothing. That's the magic of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully the orchestra's not too loud. That's my job. But
oh, how nice it is to hear a conductor say that. Music in my ears.
So tell us about your time in New York. You've gotten to New York. You've all of a sudden it started to click for you. How did your career officially start? Your professional career?
So I would say there were two stages. One was I had not performed in a couple of years because I could not get any engagements after school, after I graduated from Mannes. And it was interesting. Everybody thought, because things were going great at Mannes, everybody thought immediately after you graduate, you're going to get into one of the prestigious young artist programs and start getting engagements. And that never happened, to everybody's surprise, including myself. So then I had several years, I would say from 2011 until 2015, where I barely performed at all. And talk about building character and strength there and finding the will to continue. But and then I went to the Martina. I was accepted to the Martina Arroyo Foundation program, the Prelude to Performance. And I honestly, when I got accepted, I didn't even know. And when I applied, how what an important and wonderful program this is. I was not aware of it at all. But I thought, well, I might as well. They were doing operas that I was interested in for that season, and it was the most wonderful experience. And from there, I got fantastic reviews. I sang the Marquise de Buckenfield in the Fille du Régiment, and I got incredible reviews, which I am sure that really, really helped me get sort of some sort of attention from even people at the Metropolitan Opera. It so happened, and then I did a concert with Loft Opera, an amazing company that sadly no longer is around. Very innovative opera company. And so I got some amazing reviews there as well for the Verdi concert that we did. And it so happened that I had, how it works with reviews and magazines, they can come out months after the performance. So I ended up getting continuous rave reviews for about 4 or 5 months, which suddenly sort of brought me a little bit more on the spotlight, and after that, in 2016, I got my Met debut. And what's interesting, and I guess in terms of how life and career works, and I want younger artists to hear this, is that I got this engagement at a period where my artist visa was expiring in a couple of months. Didn't have management at the time. I had just signed, I think maybe 6 months before I got the Met engagement. I had no way of knowing where I'm going to be living, what country, what city, what is happening with my life. Nothing booked. And I decided for that specific reason, I thought, okay, well, obviously my artist visa is not going to be renewed because I have nothing booked, no work booked. So I am going to move somewhere in the world. It's not going to be back to Greece because there's not much happening there in terms of opera. At the time, there wasn't. So I thought, okay, let me do the NIOP competition, which is a great opportunity to sing for other opera companies around the world. And I thought, well, since I'm moving, let's figure out where I'm moving and if I'm going to get any engagements. So I did not the competition, the audition. And I sang for all these international opera houses, thinking one of them is going to be interested. And the Met was there. Somebody from the Metropolitan, the wonderful Lenore Rosenberg, was there, who everybody in the business knows. And so they gave me this opportunity. But it's interesting because, I went there thinking, I'm obviously living in New York, so let me figure out where I'm going. And I ended up getting there, the most amazing opportunity of my life, So that was a fantastic coincidence, I guess. And
all that hard work, all that challenge, those years of challenge of finding out who you are and who you want to be, it finally comes together in that moment. So tell us backstage at the Met or in the rehearsal process as you're about to take this next level of your career. What was it like? How did it feel to you?
It was amazing. It really was amazing because so when I sang at the Met, I had never sung a full role in a professional production ever.
That is amazing. That's incredible. Wow.
So I had done a role at Manis, I had done the Martina Arroyo program, and I had done a role at Aspen Music Festival as a young artist. But I had not done a full production in a professional environment. So it was, as you can imagine, the nervousness and anxiety that anybody would feel normally for their Met debut was times 1,000 because of that. So, which made it all that more special, actually, for me. So I had assumed that I'm going to be terrified. I'm a very naturally sort of on the nervous side of things as a person. And I thought that I was going to be terrified. I'm going to be physically sick, and that it's going to be that it's going to feel impossible. And what was amazing was I remember the first stage rehearsal, because as you know, in the beginning it was in the rehearsal rooms downstairs, and I knew that it was Tech Week. We were going to go on stage for the first time, and the night before I could not sleep at all because I thought, how am I going to make it through this rehearsal on the stage? I'm going to be panicked. And it was actually the opposite. I remember setting foot on that stage and singing the first note. I mean, I was pinching myself, backstage, and that this is about to happen. I'm going to take my first steps on the stage, and it's just a rehearsal. And I actually set foot on the stage and I started singing, and I felt, Jason, like it felt as though I had walked home for the first time. And I will never forget that feeling. It felt right. It didn't feel scary. It felt like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And also because, not to be, big-headed, but because of the size of my voice, I had not realized how, I guess, uncomfortable it had been for me singing in smaller spaces, and also maybe not so nice for the people listening, compared to an amazing opera house like the Met. I remember opening my mouth and singing and hearing my voice resonate and feeling so much freedom and to sing with my full voice, so that was amazing. And of course the opening night, it was the most magical night of my life. I had, I think, 27 people fly from all over the world, friends and family, to be with me. And that was, they're
amazing. What a great pinnacle to achieve, and it's so special to hear your story, to hear through all of that adversity, those challenges and those negative things, to finally get there. It's not about the it's the journey, and to finally get there is it's not about how hard. Everyone has a different path. Your path was just a different one.
Yes, and it's interesting because, of course, it's a Metropolitan Opera debut. It's a huge thing, right? I understand that, and I'm grateful for it. But it's, and that is magical. But what made it really special that I had not expected is that it was very healing. It felt as though, after so much rejection, and when I say so much, I have not even told you the beginning of it. I have had people say to me, at Guildhall, I don't think you belong in this industry and you're never going to make it. So I think you should start looking at different career paths. You don't belong. I just cannot see you as an opera singer, and getting to that engagement at the Metropolitan Opera was so healing. And it was more than anything that, I made the right choice, that this was all the sacrifices I've had to make throughout these years, and all the times that people wondered and asked me, why are you continuing? What keeps you going? I mean, obviously it's not going to happen for you. So when are you going to do something else? And I would say, no, because I haven't exhausted every opportunity yet. I haven't exhausted every, I haven't knocked on every door yet. And I'm going to keep going until I can say that I've tried it all and it didn't work out. And I'm not there yet. And so that moment was that sort of pat on the shoulder for me to say, good job for not giving up. And it would be wonderful if now I get to have the career of my dreams. But even if I don't, I can say this was all worth it. And I made it was the right.
To be a soloist on that stage it puts you in rarefied air, and it's really, truly something spectacular. And that's one of my favorite roles, the sneezing maid Berta.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you have a good, does comedy come easy for you? Because that's a great role.
I love comedy. I think that's where I shine. It comes very natural to me. And I do it in a very serious way, I'd like to think. So, which can be very effective. And I think it's very, I torture myself. I have to tell you, when I do comedic roles, I sort of torture myself with trying to be true to the character as opposed to just playing for laughs.
That makes it even funnier.
Yes. But it is, I torture myself throughout the rehearsal period because I'm constantly there. You know, if you're performing a dramatic role, it's not so obvious if the audience is being transported with you, is receiving what you're trying to communicate, because, you know, somebody might be tearing up, but you're not going to see that. And not everybody gets emotional not everybody cries when they get emotional anyway. But with comedy, you know, if you're not hearing the laughs, you know, people are not laughing, you know. So during rehearsal period, in the studying process and the character development process, you know, it's a constant battle between, am I being true to the character, but also this is a comedy and people should have a good time and people should laugh, and this is supposed to be a funny role and a funny character. So striking that balance it's maddening, but I also love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, I think Sita in Gianni Schicchi is my favorite role of all times.
And mezzos are like a fine wine. You can sing Sita for a very, very long time.
Exactly.
I've worked with some great Sitas who were quite elderly and really had but mezzo voices, like bass voices, grow and they deepen and darken over the years, which is pretty amazing.
And also, I think the fun part about the sort of comedic roles is that the older you get, you bring something different to it. And even when your voice starts to get to be past its prime, so to speak, you can do a lot more things with a spoken voice, and that can be hysterically funny. So it's something that you can grow into these roles for sure.
Who are some of your inspirations as singers? Some of the people who've inspired you along the way?
Well, I would say, obviously, not to be stereotypical as a Greek person, but Maria Callas, obviously, I think for most singers, right? Even, you know, male singers.
Even non-Greek singers, I love her too.
Right, yes. Maria Callas, purely for the commitment to the emotions and the colors and the commitment to the music. I cannot think of a finer artist. So that was a huge inspiration for me. I started off as a soprano as well, so I was connecting even more with that. I thought that's the rep I'm going to sing. But as a mezzo, I have to say Stephanie Blythe and Dolores Zajic are icons. I had the pleasure of working with Dolores Zajic and studying with her, which was
one of the wildest voices, one of the most exciting performers I've ever seen on stage.
And
live.
Not only an exciting voice, but what I got to understand when I worked with her and when I studied with her was that she is a really fine instrument, of course, but what is phenomenal about her, she is the most incredible instrumentalist among singers. I mean, she knows how to play her instrument better than anybody else I've ever met. She knows every little inch of her voice and how to use it in her resonance, and she's amazing. And then Stephanie Blythe is a whole other, you know, sacred beast. I mean, I will never forget the first time I fell in love with her through watching her, you know, on YouTube and CDs back in London. But the first time I heard her sing live, I will never ever forget that. She powers over
everybody. She there's like her, everybody else in the cast.
Precisely. I remember she came on stage and it was actually Gianni Schicchi, and I remember she came on stage and it's not even singing wise, it's not even you know, there are no big arias for Sita, or it's an ensemble role. And I remember she came on stage and she sang just a couple of lines in the middle of her voice, and I remember thinking, is she amplified? It sounded like as though she was the only person that was using a microphone or something. It's unreal. And the color, it is stunning. It is the most stunning color. And the artistry, of course, is mesmerizing.
I first met Stephanie Blythe when I was in an undergraduate at the SUNY Potsdam at the Crane School of Music, where she went for many years because she switched in back her major back and forth. She'd go music, she'd go something else, she'd go back to music again. And I was a freshman, a young kid, an 18-year-old, and I was in an male a cappella group, and we backed her up singing Walking on Broken Glass by Annie Lennox. And the voice was a Mack truck. It was like, I have it on a VHS cassette somewhere. But then I heard her do Hello, Dolly at Opera Theater North up in SUNY Potsdam. And then, of course, she took off and became one of the world's great opera singers. I saw her at the Met do Aida, and it was like her Omneris was here. Everyone else was there.
Yes. It is incredible. I love what she brought to the character. I mean, I think she is probably one of the finest actresses in the opera world. It is incredible. The amount of detail that she brings to every role. Her Mistress Quickly, for example, is at least 5 classes above everybody else's, and I mean above really fine artists. She has a subtlety, and you can tell she really does her homework, and she knows everything about the background, what it should be. She's a true inspiration.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It's always great to hear who inspires, I think, wonderful singers to be even more wonderful singers.
Yeah. And she's one of these, and Dolores Zajic. They're two of the people that make me feel, completely as an audience member. It takes me back to not feeling like a singer, but feeling like an audience member, just grateful that they have put all the work they have put into their art, so that we get to experience it. Because I consider both of this performance. Also, Sondra Urbanovsky, I saw her last Roberto de Vereux performance.
She's spectacular, yeah.
And there are some performances from these 3 singers, that contemporary singers, that I felt were, are going to go down in history. And it felt like it was a moment in the theater where you could sense that everybody was breathing with the singer, and that this is the magic of opera. This is why this was composed. This is what this is supposed to be, and how glorious that I get to experience this.
It's why it still lives 100, 200, 300 years after its composition, that it's relevant today.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. So now you've been on the journey. You've become a mother in the last 2 years. How has that deepened your appreciation of the music you sing?
It's, I think, quite interesting. Obviously, becoming a parent matures you a lot. And as we know, everything that we go through, the same with COVID, every hardship that we go through and happiness, and every intense moment enriches who we are as people, and therefore who we are as artists, and what we bring, what we have to say, right? When we perform, what we have to communicate. But there's also another thing that, more on the practical side of things, when you have a toddler, obviously time is more limited. So if you want to get something done, you gotta get it done. If you're gonna, you don't have all the luxury in the world in terms of hours in a day to do what you need to be doing. So the time that you have becomes a lot more focused, I should say.
I find having my kids around, I get more done. I've had to be incredibly focused on how to get things done, and then, drive my daughters around and this and that. I've got older kids, but it's amazing how they force you. Everything gets in a new perspective when you become a parent, I think.
Right. And as it has been with COVID, I found that, my relationship with my voice has been so enriched because of COVID, because I've had the sort of luxury during this time to discover what my pure voice is, what it wants to do, as opposed to what it's expected to do for the roles that I'm being hired to sing, or the concerts that I have to sing, and also this whole doubt of when are we coming back? How are we going to come back? When is my next engagement going to be? All of this is being poured into my sound now. you know
That's
um,
true. That's great fuel for emotion and for,
Absolutely.
that's what music is for me, has always been that I get to process life and then put it back out again. And often I find myself a very happy person because I get to put everything negative into, all my stress and that builds great tension. I think that
Right.
translates to the audience as being excitement.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I think for many of us, if we're going to be honest about it, I think many of us struggled with having to consider other career options during COVID. Um, and I am not ashamed to say I was one of these people. I definitely had to think about it. And that has actually been a very positive thing for my singing, because having to look at other careers, in the beginning you think, well, it's good and reassuring to figure out that there are other things that I can do and that I'm good at, and I'm going to be okay if this doesn't go back to normal. But at the same time, it's also, and the things that I would enjoy doing and that I enjoy doing. For example, I started teaching and it's going incredibly well. And
I'm
I
glad to hear that. Congratulations. That's wonderful.
Yes. So that was a new COVID thing that's been wonderful. But it also is a reminder that while there are so many other things that most of us can do, and we are a very resourceful people, artists, and of course through our artistic journey, we are forced to become good at many different things. I can think of a lot of musicians that would be great managers and opera administrators and social media people and a lot of things, but it reminds you that while there are so many things that you can do well and that you could make a living out of, there's nothing else that makes your heart sing the way, making music does, and it puts a spotlight back on what is your true calling. Therefore, I know that coming back is going to be a whole different animal now. It's a whole, it's a renewed relationship. It's like a renewed love, if you want, you know.
That flame has not been dimmed. It's going to come back even stronger. And one thing we've learned in history, I'm a history person. I teach college. I love to study histories. Is that after great tragic events in human history, we come back and arts come pouring out because it has to. That's how we all, as a society, that's how we process our grief and our loss and our love. And is these universal human stories that opera exists on.
Right. And I mean, we have all been through so much this past year, that I cannot wait to see people perform. I really cannot wait to see what people are going to bring into their music.
What's something that you've learned about yourself during this period?
I think that what I just said, I think I was very much reminded of the fact that singing is my calling. There's no way around it. This is what I'm here to do. This is the way that I can be. That while there are all these other things that I could do pretty well, singing is the way with which I can contribute most to the society. That, if I can think of what can I give, what do I have to offer, this is where I think all of my power, if you want, is where my strength is and what I have to give. And I had forgotten about that for a while. You get so caught up in trying to make it happen and trying to get work lined up. And once you have work, it's getting it all done, right? And making it good. That you forget about your love, and you forget about why you're doing it. You can forget that this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And it is a love. It's a passion. It's not just a job. It's a passion. We don't just phone it in, right? It's every time we're out there, it's got to be you give yourself, you give your best, and that's what ultimately that's what it's all about in the end.
Yes. Well, and these are the most engaging, at least, performances and performers for sure. And you can see, always performers who are perfect technically, but they have nothing to communicate, and you can admire it for the dexterity, but it's not what captivates you, and you can see that there's so many musicians who, even the imperfect ones, who pour so much of themselves into it, and it is just a glorious thing to experience.
Art is an incredible thing, and how special that's going to be when it returns at the Met and all these other places, and in all the communities.
It's so soon. I'm so excited for you, and especially in an orchestral environment, it is as exciting as it gets, really.
I'm very lucky. I get to choose the artists I work with and pick the orchestra players, and I do a lot of that. And to me, it's like family. I haven't seen in a year and a half. We're so used to making music with each other; it's just so organic. And what's it going to be like again? And every time I look at Beethoven, it's always changing to me because it keeps coming back throughout my career. And Beethoven 5 is all about light over darkness, and we've all traveled that together. It's all about light over darkness. That was Beethoven processing his losing his hearing and only being able to put that into his music and not into society. So it's going to be very special, really powerful.
And for the audience, it's going to be so interesting to see the audience's reaction, and I'm sure they're going to be a lot more appreciative now.
Well, it's we've all become these type of philosophers during the COVID period, and I think we're so much deeper thinking now because we've had time we've never had before, and then we just apply it to see how can we, what does art mean to us? Do I really want to do this after all these challenges we've faced? And of course, the answer is yeah.
Yes, I think for most people, but also interestingly enough, I think, and that's been a wonderful thing that it's been normalized because of COVID. Artists very often have had to do side jobs and have whole careers on the side to support their families. And I think there was always so much stigma around that. And one thing that has been wonderful about COVID is that has been normalized. The
wiped away.
And it's normalized, and it's no longer considered as you're a second-class artist because you have to have a side job.
We had Brad Moore on the show, and Brad Moore is like, listen, to all my colleagues out there, he goes, just because you're not doing art right now doesn't mean you're not an artist.
Right.
That was very powerful to me because a lot of I know people at the Metropolitan Opera, like principal singers who are landscaping.
Yes.
I mean, doing things totally outside of the artistic realm because we've had to.
And you know what the thing is, the funny thing about this is that people, even though, it has been normalized now and you're not supposed to doubt somebody out loud, right? Just because they have a second job. I think there are still people who are not believers that doesn't make you a second-class singer or artist. But I think it's just so narrow-minded because in reality, everything we do enriches who we are as artists and what we bring. So somebody who has other interests and is doing other things and is also getting confident doing something else. That adds to your artistry. One informs the other. It's like 360. We're a whole multifaceted people. And
sometimes those even the negative journeys, they inform our artistry. They gives us extra passion to sing and the extra emotional wealth to draw upon.
Yes, I think more so the negative, unfortunately. So yeah, I think that's been a wonderful development during COVID, and that people have been open about it, and especially for younger artists to see that. As you said, I have a lot of colleagues from the Metropolitan Opera who have launched new careers without giving up singing, and they're doing really well in both. And now they're also back to singing, and I think it's wonderful for singers to see that you don't have to be, for young artists to see that you don't have to be a starving artist. You can get to follow your dream and do what you want to whatever degree the industry allows you, right? Because it's not everybody's meant to become a super successful musician, but you can do it at whatever capacity you're meant to be doing it, and also do something else that makes you feel confident and a productive member of the society. And because that's another thing that I think most of us struggle with. I think being the periods between engagements.
Of course.
Can often be long periods of time where you feel, if you don't have anything else to prepare coming up, you can feel just unproductive and wonder, what am I doing in this world while everybody else is working 9 to 5 or 9 to 8 or whatever it is. And I think it's very important to have that outlet somewhere else.
Well, thank you for sharing all these insights. It's really been a pleasure catching up with you and hearing about your work and your thought process. And I can't wait to hear when you start to return to the stage, when the concerts start and the performances on. I will definitely be there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really wonderful catching up with you.
Where can people go to find out more about your schedule, about your music, and where can they hear your singing as well?
So I am definitely on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Karolina Pilou, and you can find me on YouTube. I have my channel there and my website, which is my full name, karolinapilou.com.
Well, get out there, check out this wonderful artist who is going to be right back on the world stages when the opera industry, the wheels start turning again. Thank you so much, Karolina. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much. Likewise, Jason.
Thank you for joining us on Music Matters with Jason Tramm. Please remember to subscribe and follow us on our various platforms. It really means a lot to us as our community is growing and expanding. Check us out on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all those places as well. We're just brand new to those platforms. We're starting to upload older episodes up there as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and remember, keep music alive.